From the company that provides you this glorious masterpiece and this glorious waste of space. A game produced by a subsidiary of a massive movie studio who brought us Jaws and Jurassic Park. And developed by the same creative team that made the last game. It's a Bandicoot on a jetpack! Oh wait, that's not it. Ladies and gents, this is...
Crash Bandicoot 2. Cortex Strikes Back.
And this is going to be our next game here on QuikViews. As the title suggests, this game is a sequel to the original Crash Bandicoot. And yes, that bulbous-headed scientist is back, this time sporting the kick-ass voice of Clancy Brown, who is also known for providing the voices of Mr. Krabs and Lex Luthor. The game starts off immediately from where the original game left off. Having been defeated by Crash, Cortex is seen screaming to the top of his lungs as he falls down below to the islands. Having crashed into a dark cave, he lights up the place with his... thumb? And discovers a giant floating jewel in front of him, simply called a crystal.
Of course.
Having gone into hiding for well over a year in his giant space station orbiting above Earth's atmosphere, he and his new comrade named Engine have been studying the crystal and discovered that there are more crystals out there to be found. However, because Cortex is currently short on minions to do the dirty work for him, he decides he'll have to rely on an old adversary to help him in his cause. Wanna guess who it is? No, really. Take a good guess who it is. Thought so! So anyway, here we see Crash snoozing while Tana here is typing on her laptop. Gosh, Tana sure looks different here, doesn't she? She seems to be sporting a ponytail and isn't wearing any really feminine clothes. Huh. Actually, this isn't Tana. This is Coco, a current familiar in the franchise. She's Crash's younger sister, who went through similar events that Crash went through in the first game and has been living with him ever since. This is only hinted at in the manual, though. The game doesn't make any mention of how Coco came to be and just slaps her in to be a helper character for Crash. If you want to know what happened to Tana, well, let's just say some disputes between Naughty Dog and Universal pretty much sealed her fate. Her total disappearance from the franchise is never referenced in the American continuity, but in Japan, however, they actually came up with a pretty interesting reason. Oh, Tana! Where are you? Did she go shopping? What's this?
To Crash. I am a wonderful adult woman, so I decided to go to Mr. Pinstripe's place. Tana.
It's a parting letter. No way! Wow, she actually dumped the guy that saved her ass in the first game in favor of one of Cortex's most loyal minions. Well, I guess the old saying is as true as ever. Good girls always go for the bad boys. Oh yeah. So yeah, we'll never see her and her bodacious Presta bunnies again. At least not for another 9 years anyway. So back to the story. Coco's laptop goes kaput on her and she asks for Crash to get her an extra battery pack for it. However, while on his merry way, he runs into some random warping thingamajig and ends up in some unknown warp room chamber. From there, he's suddenly greeted by Jesus!
Well. If it isn't Crash Bandicoot, welcome.
Jeez, Cortex, I know you have a head that can rival the likes of Mega Might and Jimmy Neutron, but Christ, do you really feel the need to rub it in? Anyway, Cortex tries to kiss up to Crash and tell him he needs to find crystals for him. He makes up some bullshit story that a crisis is commencing and that the world will soon explode or something like that, and that the crystals are the only way to prevent said crisis. Luckily for him, seeing how Crash is the most gullible idiot in the world, he agrees to help out and Cortex sends him on his way.
I could rely on you.
And thus the game begins. Now, with all I talked about with the first game, what exactly is there to say about the second one? Quite a lot, actually. So sit down and shove some popcorn down your pie hole, because here we go. When you initially start the game, you'll be taken to this circular hub called a warp room. There are a total of about 5 major warp rooms in the game, and each one houses about 5 levels each, which makes for about 25 levels in total. You can access the 5 levels in any order you want, so if there's a particular level you aren't too happy to play right away, you can save it for later. However, if you want to make any real progress, you'll have to collect all 5 crystals a warp room holds. To get a crystal, you just have to play through one of the 5 levels and collect it. For about 99% of the game, the crystals are pretty much sticking out in the open, just begging for Crash to touch it. But there is that 1% where I did end up missing a crystal on the first try. The system itself doesn't really break the experience by any means, but it just feels pointless since they're pretty much out in the open. I guess you could argue that it's due to the fact that the Crash trilogy is probably one of the most linear platformers of all time, but if some of the later levels had crystals that were well hidden or guarded, then maybe it'd make the game a little more interesting. But as is, they're just random plot devices and nothing more. Once you get all the crystals in a warp room, the platform in the middle will activate and allow you to go up a floor. During this process, you'll have to face a boss in order to proceed. Oh goody, because we haven't had enough of those yet, have we? Making a return from the first game, we have Ripperoo, who's sporting quite a dapper look, but he's just as nuts as he was before. And then we have the newcomers. First we have the Komodo brothers, who rely on their razor-sharp blades and insane pirouette skills. Then we have series familiar, Tiny Tiger, who will follow you around on a bunch of floating platforms that give out after a while. And finally we have Injin, who we previously saw in the intro. His gimmick is without a doubt the oddest, as your basic moves are replaced with an unlimited amount of Wumpa fruit, which you have to throw to his machine's glowing parts. Again, none of the bosses are a huge challenge, however the oddity of the last two will definitely throw you off guard, so be careful of that. Once you defeat a boss, you'll be able to move on to the next warp room and continue your journey from there. However, if you want to face the boss again for God knows what reason, you won't be able to do so normally since going up and down warp rooms will only take you to that other warp room. So what do? Hold down the triangle button when going up a warp room, and the boss battle will activate. Consider that bit of trivia a gift from me. Well, enough about the bosses. Let's get down to the actual gameplay. Compared to the first Crash Bandicoot, Crash 2 has been given a pretty big overhaul, and I mean damn big. You still have your basic jumps and spin attacks, but now you have a few additional abilities at your disposal, all of which are triggered in some way pressing the circle button. Crash can now crouch, slide, jump higher, and perform a body slam. These new abilities give Crash more versatility than he had in the first game. In fact, these moves are absolutely necessary if you want to get through most hazards in the game. Along with the basic abilities, Crash will be able to take control of different modes of transportation, such as a hot rod style jet ski, a jetpack, and a... Wait, isn't that a... Oh god, I know that look in his eyes. No, Crash, don't do it! Oh, he did it. Yes, folks, much like the first game, Crash can ride on another animal to get him across a level. And of all things, he's riding a frickin' baby polar bear! For God's sakes, Crash, have you no shame? They're an endangered species! Though, if I can give the poor tyke some credit, he controls a lot better than the boar in the first game. He can move from left to right at a faster pace, he's got pretty decent traction on air, and he also has a dash ability, which is always nice, but... Jeez, Crash, could you be any rougher on the little Dickens? I think that little detail speaks for itself. I mean, wow. That cameo he had in Crash to Insanity is making a whole lot more sense now. With these gimmicks aside, there's at least one other gimmick from the first game that's also been given a slight revamp. Remember those levels where our giant boulder was chasing after Crash? Well, they're back, and they're just as hungry for blood as they were before. Luckily, to give you more of an edge, you'll come across a few zippers that'll give you a quick burst of speed. On the flip side, though, there's also a few bombs that'll slightly slow you down. And there's also these electric fences that, well, you do the math. There are 3 levels with this gimmick, but one of them adds in a little twist. Instead of giant boulders, you're being chased by giant killer polar bears. See, Crash? This is what you get for assaulting and riding on baby polar bear... Oh, come on! Well, Crash, I hope you're happy. You just brought the polar bear race that much closer to extinction. I hope you're proud of yourself, you furry... Well, while we're on the subject of things that kill... There's a bunch of new hazards that'll get in Crash's way. The most prominent of them are these little abominations, the nitro crates. In the first game, the only crates you had to worry about were the TNT crates, which activate a timer when hopped on and then explode once time is up. With nitro crates, however, they explode in your face upon impact. These buggers are everywhere, so for the sake of your sanity, don't get cocky. Besides that, you've also got a slew of new enemies to deal with. You've got turtles that appear to sport spikes on their sides or razor blades on their backs, penguins that can perform spin attacks, porcupines that instantly extend their spikes when they see you, giant plants that shoot exploding seeds, and a whole bunch of nerds that look a little too familiar. You know, it's funny. Cortex is supposed to be short on minions, right? Who the heck are these guys working for anyway? Oh, snap! Holy crap, Embryo, is that you? Oh my god, man, why is your head so huge? Yes, folks, that stuttering Dorkamule is back, and shockingly, it's hinted at that he's the one in control of most of the enemies and bosses you have to face. Why is he doing this? Well, after the events of the first game, Embryo became fed up with playing second fiddle to Cortex and now wants nothing more than to put him out of commission. Because he knows you've been duped into helping Cortex gather crystals, he warns Crash that he'll do whatever it takes to stop you if you continue to gather crystals for Cortex. However, he also tells you that if you really want to save the world, you should gather gems instead, which he claims he'll use to power a laser strong enough to take down Cortex's space station. And with that said, folks, yes, the gems from Crash 1 are back. The same rules still apply. You have to break every breakable crate in the level in order to get a gem. Nitro crates are also counted to the crate total, so in cases that they're present throughout a level, you'll need to find a green switch that will destroy every nitro crate in that level. Unlike Crash 1, however, you don't have to destroy all the crates in one life, and thank God for that! Now you're free to break every crate without fear of death. So if you feel you've missed a crate, feel free to commit suicide to reach those extra crates! Just remember though, you still have the life counter, and it will lead to one of these if you lose them all.
Game over.
Oh, don't rub it in, you banana-colored bastard! Actually, speaking of deaths, because Crash 2 sports much more detailed graphics and animations, that also means Crash is sporting some new death animations. You wanna see them? Then feast your eyes on these beauties! Well, I guess that's another one to scratch off the list. But I digress. Let's get back to the subject about gems. Again, you'll be collecting most gems by smashing all the crates in the level, but there are a bunch more of them that involve other methods. Just like in Crash 1, there are colored gems that will unlock paths to alternate portions of a level. But getting these colored gems require you to go out of your way to do things you wouldn't expect to do firsthand. In the first level, for example, you actually had to avoid breaking crates altogether in order to earn a blue gem. But the more common of finding secret gems come in the form of these special paths that'll whisk you away to an alternate pathway through the level. There are two types of these paths, the aforementioned color gem paths and the skull paths. In order to access skull paths, you have to come across it in the level without losing a life. Oh, jeez! And here I thought we were completely done with that trite method of collecting gems. Well, to this game's credit, it's more of a special occasion kind of deal rather than the main crux, so I'll give them props for that. While we're on the subject of paths, located in almost every level you will come across paths with a question mark on it. These will lead you to bonus levels, very reminiscent of those in the first game. However, during these bonus levels, your main objective is to break every single crate and gather every other collectible you can get your hands on. When you're done, all those crates, lives, and Wumpa Fruit will be added to your main total.
Still going.
There are also rare times when you won't be able to break all the crates in a normal playthrough of a level, and there's no means of getting to that secret path normally. Well, you'll have to rely on Lady Luck to find these instances where Crash warps randomly into a secret warp room, which houses alternate paths of pre-existing levels. Seriously, good luck trying to find all of them. If you've watched my previous QuikViews, you'll know that I honestly prefer the first game the most in the trilogy, but Crash 2 comes at a really close second. This sequel did so much stuff right for the franchise that it's really hard not to recommend. Crash has more abilities under his belt, there's more variety in level structure, the gem system is much more forgiving, the countless amount of attention to detail is stunning, the soundtrack is actually pretty freaking catchy, and you can now save your game normally inside warp rooms. God, finally! The only major issue I have with this game is that it's still a D-pad only game. But for some reason this is only a problem for the PS3 port. I remember owning this game on disc for my old PS2 console and the DualShock controls actually worked for it. So what happened? What suddenly came about so that DualShock doesn't work for it anymore on my PS3? Well, if you own a PSP, you can download Crash 2 on it and customize the controls so that the thumb pad works as a pseudo D-pad, so there's always that option if you're available to do so. You can also do the same with the first Crash game as well, so if you have a PSP, don't miss out on that opportunity. But other than that, I have very little to complain about with Crash 2. It's just an overall fun package, and it's only fair that I rate this game an 8 out of 10. This is easily one of Crash's finest adventures. You just can't call yourself a fan if you haven't played this one yet. Or the next one we'll be getting into eventually. This has been QuikViews, and I'm Captain Reginald /JamesManExtreme, and I hope to see you all on the next QuikViews. Take care.